So as it turns out, major and minor are not the only kinds of sounds that we can make as musicians, because that would be extremely limited if the only emotions that we could experience were happy and sad, and that's it. So we got a few more options that we're going to talk about. And I want to talk about them in the context of intervals first, because that's going to help us build understanding for when we get to triads. So there are two kinds of intervals that I didn't talk about previously that we need to address, and those are called augmented and diminished intervals. So an augmented interval is an interval where we've taken a major interval and we've raised the top note a half step. So for example, if I wanted to play a perfect fourth, but I want to raise that fourth up a half step, I now have an augmented fourth. The same can be done with a fifth. Raise the fifth a half step. Now we have an augmented fifth. Now, this is where it starts to get a little confusing, because to our ears, there's no difference between an augmented fifth and a minor sixth. And when you compare the notes of an augmented fifth and a minor sixth, it actually is the same interval. An augmented fifth might be a C to a G sharp, and a minor sixth would be a C to an A flat. So the key difference between an augmented fifth and a minor sixth is the note and what its name is. From C to A is a sixth. It doesn't matter what type of sixth it is. If I have a C on the bottom and an A on the top, that's going to be some kind of sixth. If I have a C and a G, that's going to be some kind of fifth. So therefore, I cannot call a C and a G sharp a minor sixth, because it's a G, not an A. And you might be thinking, boy, that's dumb. And you're right. So we can do the same thing with our minor intervals, where we diminish them. This is called a diminished interval. So if I start with my perfect fourth, and I bring my fourth down a half step, I now have a diminished fourth. But Mr. Barker, that's just a major third. Yep, but it isn't. Remember, it has to do with what note is written. If I have an F flat over a C, that's a diminished fourth. If I have an E over a C, that is a third, a major third. So then, Mr. Barker, can I diminish or augment a non-perfect interval? Why, yes, you can. If I take a major sixth and I bring it up a half step, you might think, oh, that's a minor seventh. Well, if I have an A to a G, that is a minor seventh. However, if I have an A to an F double sharp, that is an augmented sixth. A double sharp? Yeah, it's just where you sharp the note twice, so we go up 2 half steps. So instead of an F, it's an F double sharp, which is a G, but we call it F double sharp. I know, isn't music great? So as a review, a diminished interval is when we take a minor or perfect interval and lower the top note a half step. The same can be said of augmented intervals when we take a major or perfect interval and raise the top note a half step. So what does this mean for triads? Well, it's the exact same thing. For your major triads, you raise the last note a half step, and that makes an augmented triad. For example, if I play D flat major, but I raise the A flat up a half step, I get D flat augmented. Mysterious. Now for a diminished chord, I take a minor triad and I lower the top note a half step. So if I have a B minor chord and I lower the top note a half step, that gives me a B diminished chord. This was probably very confusing because honestly, it should be. There's a lot of weird rules like double sharps and double flats. That's rude. first of all, and then these are the same interval, like they sound exactly the same, but I have to call it either an augmented fifth or a minor sixth, and there's a difference between those two. They sound the same. You're right. All of that is right, and it's some of the dumbest stuff in music, but it's how it works. So, you better learn it. Good luck. Ask questions if you don't get it.